Right, let's look at some graphite side projects. To start with, the value scale. I'm used to using a 9 value scale. Some people call it the Flemish value scale. There's many names for it, but basically going from 9 being the darkest and 1 being the lightest is how I will refer to these colors. So how I recommend you approach this project in graphite, this white square will be paper white. You don't put anything on there. And this black square will be the darkest your graphite can actually reach. You approach this by first drawing squares, make it nice, make it neat. You can look at it and not cringe. You can do 2 by 2 centimeter squares on a paper, and then you count out 9 of those squares. You leave the first one blank. You fill out the darkest one in as dark as you can with graphite. Then you find the middle point. You try to nail that value. You can use another value scale from the screen here, for example, or if you have one printed out, you can compare to that and try to match this value as precisely as you can. After that, you go for the intermediate values, try to match those, and you repeat the process until you have the full value scale. And filling out these value scales actually helps you learn to handle your tools as well. So you will notice that for this square, you might want to use 2H because it's so light that it's hard to handle with a 2B pencil, for example. And maybe, this one might be an HB kind of square. You can do all of it with 2B, but you could just look over this and see how you feel, basically, because it's a bit of a feely thing, honestly. Some people have a super light touch and they don't leave any mark when they draw. Some people leave very heavy marks, which you want to avoid, and there's things you can do like holding the pencil correctly. But yeah, you want to fill out your materials here, fill out your paper for one, fill out your pencils, and then one thing you want to learn is you fill it out in exactly the same value entirely, the whole square. So you dot pick those squares to be just one value. It's a practice for your eye as well. You learn to see these little blemishes and smudges that are not the same color as the value next to it. So you either pick things off to match the value around it, or you add something in to match the value around it. And that will give you great control over your tools quite quickly, honestly. So I recommend you do this during or before the bark project. So the next project after the value scale is the sphere. I recommend doing this because it just helps you understand the 3-dimensional form. You learn a little bit about the basic concept of light and shadow. Light comes from, excuse me, I'm drawing with the mouse, so it's not super precise. Light comes from this direction. It means a sphere will leave a shadow line basically around here. This shadow line is called the core shadow, the terminator, the bedbug line. There's many names for it. And you can see over here where there is no bouncing light coming from the white surface. It is actually just really dark because there's less light hitting it, as opposed to, over here where the light bounces and really makes it quite light. And this thing over here is the cast shadow. It is left, by light rays coming in like this. Let me just clear this up a little bit. Light rays coming in like this kind of project this shadow onto the surface below it. And yeah, following this logic, you can sort of start imagining how things will project onto other things, but that's sort of an experience thing as well. Usually around here, there's the occlusion shadow, which is the very darkest point because, there's basically just no light manages to get underneath there. In this one, it's still fairly light over there. There's maybe a small line. But yeah, you can look up an image of a sphere. I can maybe provide this one. It's not my image, but it was just on Google. Or you can set up an egg. An egg acts in the very same way. You can work from live. You can take a picture of an egg. Everyone can find probably a white egg somewhere. So yeah, I recommend this. Do mass in the thing in graphite. Don't make a background. Maybe make the cast shadow. Just keep it simple. The main point is to learn how to model things. So you make the core shadow, you mass in the darks. After that, you start finding the reflected lights. You start massing in some tone with the stump for the form of the sphere, and yeah, maybe hatch a little bit of tones around there to make it lighter. Keep it simple. You can also practice really rendering form here. If you want to finish the sphere, you can. It's beneficial for you. Just take your time with it. See it as another project you want to finish to be a better artist at the end. If you're not too excited about this project, I still recommend you at least sketch a sphere, name all the areas of the shadow, identify the highlight and all this kind of stuff. The highlight happens when you have a light source that is coming from here and it sort of reflects right back at you in the middle of this light surface. So this highlight is different from the crest of light, which is just the largest surface area being hit by the light. Okay, enough about that. I recommend you do a sphere, and I will recommend it many times during this program in different mediums. Then for the advanced projects, I recommend you do an advanced barg. This will push your graphite rendering skills further. These are just projects I feel might be good to tackle. You can pick your own plate, just, you know, pick something that challenges you, maybe even something that seems a little bit too hard at first, and if you take your time, you feel you go through the first one nicely, then I think you can do it. These, you know, obviously include a lot of anatomy, texture, you know, shadows that aren't very shadowy in every place, you know, they might get very close to halftones in places, pushing you a little bit to harder projects. This one is the Belvedere torso. It's kind of famous for being the trickiest barg to make, I think, in many people's opinions at least. I can see why, because there's a lot of subtlety, you know, things being in shadow but not the same value. There's still some very dark shadows, but in, you know, a lot of places, maybe this place for example, the shadow starts to approach the midtones in places and it gets harder to separate the light and dark families and all this kind of stuff. There's also a lot of subtle forms in here, textures to tackle. You could also do something like this. It's not as challenging as the previous ones, but if you want to practice portraiture, you can already get a grasp for, you know, alignment here. You know, this bust is basically, I think, looking a little bit upwards because the brow is higher than the ears and the ears are lower than the nose, which usually these things would kind of align. But that's, of course, you know, the idealized version of a face proportion. But yeah, if you want to learn portraiture, I recommend you do some barg portraits as well. That might be helpful. Just, you know, get something in your muscle memory. Here, when you're looking at these projects and wondering if you really will hate yourself when you pick it, look at these detail things, you know. Are these squiggly something that copying and managing will annoy the hell out of you when you're working on it, or do you feel it might be, you know, nice and relaxing? If you can find the patience, it will reward you. You will get a nice drawing in the end. Alright, well, aside from these recommended projects, I recommend you start applying your skills in graphite, since you will be skilled after tackling these projects. Just take a sketchbook, go draw something, draw from your imagination, study anatomy, all this kind of stuff you can do with these skills now. And I recommend you apply it. I said in the previous video, I recommend you, you know, chase some passion projects, start applying your skills to actually express yourself and, you know, remember why you got into art in the first place. So you don't lose sight of that just to chase, you know, fundamental skills, because that happens a lot, trust me. So yeah, have fun with these skills. Don't take it as a grind. Enjoy the process. It's a sort of meditation, honestly, working in graphite. You can just sink hours into it and it's great. So try to enjoy it. All right. Let's get into the demonstrations then, I suppose.